Hillary Clinton is presently enjoying a post-convention bounce in national polls, while Donald Trump is once again mired in controversy over his tweets and his rhetoric, this time with a Gold Star family whose Muslim army captain's son was killed in Iraq. Let's dive deeper into the numbers and analysis of the polls with Harry Enten. Harry is a senior political writer and analyst for FiveThirtyEight's. That firm has been enormously successful in telling us how things are going to come out. He joins me from New York. What's the assessment right now of this campaign, Harry?
Well, before the conventions, we had Hillary Clinton ahead, and now it seems after both conventions, Hillary Clinton is still ahead. Now, obviously, things can change, but historically speaking, if you're ahead before the conventions and ahead after the conventions, you go on to win in November.
There have been times, though, where that didn't work out. Wasn't Dukakis ahead before and after?
Well, Dukakis was certainly ahead before the conventions in 1988, but then Bush ran into a slight lead after both conventions took place. But I was thinking more along the lines of, say, 1948, when Harry Truman was trailing both before the conventions and after the conventions, and then pulled off that shocking victory in November. But again, we're dealing with a very small sample size, so I really would wait to see how large is Clinton's lead, say, at the end of August. If she has a 5 or 6 point lead at the end of August, then she's probably going to win.
Do you know what effect will the Bernie Sanders people go out and vote for her?
I think that is one of the big questions. If you look back before either of the conventions took place, you saw about a third of the Bernie Sanders supporters said they weren't going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, some of them said they weren't going to vote for Donald Trump either. They were going to vote for a third-party candidate. But I think the big question is whether or not she's able to get a large percentage of that third behind her. If she does, then she is going to win in the fall, no doubt. If she doesn't, it could be a very close race.
Apparently, everything that's happened to Trump, things he misstates, it hasn't hurt him at all in the Republican primaries. But how bad will his handling of this American Muslim hero affect him?
I think it could have a big effect in terms of campaign effects, so that, usually most things don't have an effect. But this type of thing could, in fact, have, say, a point or two. If you look back to the Judge Curiel situation in early June, you did see his poll number slide a little bit. It wouldn't be shocking to me if we have this sustained Khan family situation continuing through the month of August. It could have a detrimental effect to Trump, as the Judge Curiel thing did. So I'd be very interested to see if it can stay in the news. If it does, it could lead to Trump's numbers falling even more than they have post the Democratic National Convention.
He has had no good response to this, has he?
Not really. I mean, he's attacked the family, which isn't a good response as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes it's better just to keep your mouth shut. But Trump can't seem to help himself. So he makes these statements and then exacerbates it and makes the news cycle go another one with this story in it. If I were giving advice to him, I'd say, you know what? You don't have to say anything. Just allow the news cycle to play itself out. But it just doesn't seem that he's able to do that.
Isn't August generally a down month? Everybody on vacation this summer. People start really repping up in September.
I'd say so. I'd say that I really would want to wait for Labor Day to get a good idea of what's going on. We're going to have the Olympics coming up. August is usually a downtime. But remember, conventions usually aren't this early. They're usually during the month of August, at least the final one is.
Right.
This is unusual to have the conventions end already. So it could be that we're dealing with a new situation. We're not exactly sure how the polls will react. But if Hillary Clinton is leading come Labor Day, I think this election, although it isn't over, she's clearly a heavy favorite.
You wrote an article, "There's time for Trump or Clinton to become more likable." How?
Well, I think what I did was I looked back at over the polls since, I believe it was 1980. And what we see is that the post-convention favorability numbers, that is, do you like this person or don't like this person, have a favorable view of them, not have a favorable view of them, what we see in the past is that the numbers that we have right now at this point in the campaign aren't set in stone. Oftentimes, what you see is that the numbers shift. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Barack Obama's, for instance, went down a little bit after the DNC in 2012, while Mitt Romney's rose a little bit after the DNC in 2012, which was the final part of the final convention. So there's plenty of times for things to change. Advertisements will be going up in states. We'll have debates, which could shift things around a little bit. But really, if it's 30 days from now and we get to Labor Day and Hillary Clinton still has a lead in the polls and is seen as more favorable than Donald Trump is, it's going to be hard for him to come back. He's got really about 30 days in my mind to turn this campaign around. Even with the debates, even if they're watched by millions of people, they don't tend to shift things historically. Of course, Donald Trump is such a ahistoric figure, who can really say?
Even though a majority of Americans say the country is heading in the wrong direction, but Obama's approval ratings go up. How do you explain that?
Well, I think what's going on is that figure is that right track, wrong direction figure has historically, in fact, not correlated too well with approval ratings. So if you go back to 2012, for instance, that right track, wrong direction number was not too good and Barack Obama won re-election. The approval rating has historically been much more highly correlated with the election outcome. Now, it's not a guarantee that Hillary Clinton wins if Barack Obama's approval rating is, say, in the low 50s as it is right now. You know, you can go back to the 2000 election when Bill Clinton's approval ratings were in the 60s in most polls, and Al Gore, obviously, although he won the popular vote, lost the election. It was close either way. But usually speaking, if Barack Obama's approval rating is, say, 50 to 55% come Election Day, that tells a good sign for Hillary Clinton. She'll probably win, but it's not guaranteed.
Would you want Obama out in the hustings for you?
I would definitely want him. I mean, he is a very good orator. He brings forth the Democratic message in a very good way. And more than that, we spoke earlier about the Bernie Sanders supporters. Most Bernie Sanders supporters have a favorable view of Barack Obama. So if you want to bring those Bernie Sanders supporters into your camp, you want Barack Obama out on the trail selling the Hillary Clinton message.
Harry, is one of the puzzling things this year getting a read of Donald Trump? Are people saying they're against him and they might be voting for him?
Well,
there's no basis to go on.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can float any theory that you want to float about, you know, maybe there's some hidden Donald Trump vote. But I remember in 2008, for instance, there were a lot of people saying, oh, Barack Obama isn't going to do as well in the poll as he did in the polls because there are people who secretly won't say that they're not going to vote for a black guy. If we look back during the primary, Donald Trump pretty much got what he polled. There is no basis to believe that Donald Trump is going to do better on Election Day than the polls indicate. I go back, for instance, to the 1991 Louisiana gubernatorial race when David Duke was running. Now, David Duke is not Donald Trump, but I think that we can all agree that they both sort of have people who have racial prejudices are perhaps more likely to vote for them than for the other candidate. And there were a lot of people who said, oh, you know, David Duke is going to do better than the polls indicate because people are afraid that they're going to vote for him. In fact, what happened was David Duke did worse because there was higher black turnout. It wouldn't be surprising to me if there's higher black turnout this time around than some of the polls indicate because black voters might be so fearful of Donald Trump.
Will the vice presidential selections have an effect?
Usually vice presidents really don't have too much of an effect. I mean, you're voting for the presidential candidate, right? I mean, when was the last time that someone said, ooh, you know, I was really thinking of going for Barack Obama, but then Paul Ryan came in and he really changed my mind.
No, but Lyndon Johnson in 1960 elected Kennedy by bringing in Texas.
Well, Texas, that's the one place where vice presidents can make an effect, right, is in their home state. Now, if you look back to the 1960 election, there were different ways that Kennedy could have won, but I think that most people agree that Johnson certainly helped out in the state of Texas. This time around, Tim Kaine, I think, could help out in the state of Virginia. We did the math, and what we showed was that Tim Kaine makes it 0.7 percentage points more likely that Barack Obama wins the Electoral College. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but most things really don't have any impact in a presidential campaign. Tim Kaine's selection could, in fact, help Hillary Clinton win this election, although it probably won't make the difference at the end of the day.
Now, Pence, at the end, was pretty unpopular in Indiana. Does that give her a good chance in Indiana?
Well, Indiana is more of a red state. Obviously, Barack Obama won it in 2008, but it was a very close matchup. If Hillary Clinton is winning in the state of Indiana, this election is long over. The real place where Mike Pence's selection may make a difference is it could help the Democratic Party in that state win that gubernatorial race, and also they're gunning for a Senate seat with Evan Bayh running again in Indiana, coming off the sidelines, and perhaps with things being a little messy in that state, the Pence selection might throw the Republican Party into a little bit of disarray, and that could help the Democrats perhaps right on the margins capture that Senate seat.
Harry, great talking with you. We'll be calling on you a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks to Harry Enten. For more of Harry's reporting, check out FiveThirtyEight.com.